All right, welcome to another episode of the Music Journal podcast. If you've been listening for a little bit, this episode is going to sound a little bit different. The lady friend got me this cool lav mic that I can attach to my phone, so I'm kind of packing up. It's Christmas Eve. I'm getting ready to go to my parents' house, so I didn't have time to really set up my mic setup, and I wasn't actually going to even do a podcast episode for Christmas. I was going to wait till the week after before posting again, but due to some things that have happened recently, I kind of wanted to make this episode to talk about the event and tell you, I guess, how you could potentially avoid the most devastating thing that could ever happen to you. I know that sentence didn't really make sense. What happened was a client of mine and friend, we fell victim to the most elaborate internet scam in the entire fucking history of the world. So that sounds really complicated, sounds really weird. It's all going to make sense very soon. I'm going to talk to you about what happened. I'm going to tell you the story, the warning signs, and how you could potentially avoid a catastrophe similar to it yourself. So I guess consider it my holiday gift to you. So first of all, happy holidays. This episode goes live on Christmas, so if that's what you celebrate, then Merry Christmas. Again, this is, I guess, kind of my paying it forward for the holiday. So I guess without further ado, I'll just tell you guys what happened. So if you've been following the podcast for a little bit, you might recognize the name Kyle Bent. He's a pretty big artist that I've had on the show twice. He's toured with like Joyner Lucas, Hobson. He's performed with Wyclef Jean, and I mixed and mastered his most recent album. So just from working with him, we got pretty close. He's a very trustworthy person, and he's a good friend of mine as well. And he was verified on Facebook. So he had the little blue check that celebrities have. But he was trying to get verified on Instagram, which is allegedly harder than getting verified on Facebook. So what he did was he got connected through some sort of mutual connection to this guy named Leo, who gets people verified on Instagram. They have people who are on the inside or whatever who take your money, and then whatever happens, they do their thing, and then you're verified on Instagram. So he's telling me about this after we finished the album, and I'm like, hey, like I would also like to get verified on Instagram. Could you connect me to this guy? And he's like, yeah, for sure. So I have no reason to think that anything is suspicious with this guy Leo at all at this point in time. Neither does Kyle. Kyle introduces me to Leo. Right off the bat, one kind of sketchy thing is that he only would communicate with us on Snapchat, where the messages disappear immediately. Still not really a cause for suspicion. Kyle introduced me to him. But Leo and I start talking, and we've even jumped on the phone a couple times at this point, and he sounds like a real person. He has a British accent. He says he's from the UK. He tells me he has this company called the Billionaire Group, and he's got this business partner named Malik, who is an army guy currently in Europe. And Malik's trying to build his name as a public figure. So Leo knows I have this podcast. He says, hey, man, I'd love to connect you with Malik, get Malik on your show. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Me trying to kind of pay it forward, and do him a solid. And then I also get a guest for my podcast who I think is trustworthy and no reason to believe that anything is suspicious about it. So Malik and I meet, and right off the bat, this kid was like definitely a little bit weird. Nothing like that was a cause for alarm yet, but he would address me as like Mr. Wes to begin with. He was like extremely formal for no real reason, but we do the interview. And actually, it's funny because if you go back now in the 20 somethings of my show, there's a missing episode, and it's Malik's episode. And I'll explain why soon enough. But I think it's kind of a funny part of my legacy now that I'm missing one of my podcast episodes because of this story that I'm telling you. But me and Malik do this interview, and I definitely didn't think anything was super strange until looking back on it now after the fact. So these are things I wasn't really super focused on. Like, they did have legitimate credentials. For example, they had actual celebrities on their actual Instagram page with 100,000 followers that were endorsing them, and they addressed them by name. They're like, hey, like Malik and Leo, great to have you as part of our team or whatever. Great to be like working with you. So all of that seemed pretty legit. He was able to name drop celebrities that he's worked with that you can verify on that Instagram page that they actually have connections with. There were like slightly sketchy things about the interview. Like he'd often answer my question without even answering my question. So like I would ask him something and he'd kind of just like dance around the topic for a little bit. And one of the crazy things actually from that interview, the same girl who bought me this microphone that I'm using to record this episode with, she listened to the episode a couple days ago before I took it down. And one of the things I asked him was like, what do you recommend to an up and coming entrepreneur or something like that? And what he said was, always make sure you have a contract because there's scammers out there and you don't want to get scammed, which is extremely ironic once I explain what happened. So Malik, Leo, and I all start getting pretty close, and me being a networker and always trying to provide value like I talk about so much on the show, and me trying to kind of get involved with their business ventures and stuff like that. I offer my services. I say, hey, like, how can I help with your business? I'd love to do anything I can. Sorry, I'm about to just take a sip of coffee. So I say, how can I help? And Leo tells me that they're trying to get in touch with P. Diddy for a cigar deal, 7 to 8 figure deal. He says, if I can get him to Diddy, then I'll get paid out 6, 7 figures, whatever. And I said, let me see what I can do. So first, I hit up a big artist back in the day named Mario Winans, who I've been in connection with for the past couple of years, and he and I have talked about doing some stuff too. I hit up Mario Winans. You can look him up. He was on Bad Boy and everything. And we jump on a call. Call did not go well. It was me, Mario, Malik, Leo, and then one of Mario's like business people or whatever. And Mario was basically like, look, man, like if you don't have a product yet, I can't go to Puff with no product. And Leo was like, well, look, we have all this money. We already have the investors lined up, yada, yada, yada. Like the money's there. Nothing's going to be okayed without Diddy's approval, whatever. But Mario was like, look, man, like we're not your guys for this whole thing. So back to the drawing board for me. I reach out to a mentor of mine who's also been on the show. His name is Prince Charles Alexander, call him PC. I reach out to PC and I say, look, man, I got this 7 to 8 figure deal. If you can get us in touch with Diddy, then you'll get paid out 6, 7 figures too, or whatever. No reason to think that this isn't legit. These guys appear to have all the credentials in the world. And also, like, it's still to this day, it seems really elaborate to me that it all ended up being a scam. That'll make sense soon enough. But PC puts me in touch with this guy, Steve. I won't say his last name for just confidentiality purposes, but Steve is Diddy's brother-in-law, and he was going to be going to LA to Diddy's house for the holidays, so it was kind of like perfect timing. We all jump on a call with Steve and PC, and the call went really well. Steve was on board. He said, let me run a proposal by Diddy's marketing person. I can have it to her the day after you give me the proposal. I'm just going to get it okayed by all of his people so that when he goes to Diddy ultimately and presents the deal, Diddy can't just say like, oh, let me run it by this person, because Steve had already okayed it by that person. So that was his plan. And we legitimately spend months on this fucking proposal, me and Leo and Malik. This is all legitimate. I get on actual calls with real verifiable investors who are actually talking about putting millions of dollars into this thing, and I get emails from them that are linked to their actual website domains, like I'm not going to say any of their names just for confidentiality purposes, but I got real emails from these people who are like actors and celebrities, and it's like at their website.com, so I know it's actually them. And it's fucking crazy. And I get at one point, Leo actually sent me a Google Drive link to a film that one of these actors who was going to invest in this project was starred in, and this movie hadn't even been released yet. So the actor sent the Google Drive link to Leo, who sent it to me, and it was the actual movie, unreleased, and the whole thing in good quality. And if you look up the film, all you can see are trailers for it. So there's like real credentials here, and I'm still not totally convinced that the whole thing was a scam, because there are legit pieces of it, but it doesn't change the fact that what happened, which I'm going to get to very soon. But so that we were dealing with real stresses of like talking to these investors, some of them backing out. There are points in time where Leo like yelled at Malik because he thought that Malik blew a deal with an investor, and then Malik comes to me and we're getting closer, and he's telling me like, hey man, can you talk to Leo, like tell him it's not my fault, whatever. So I do, and I vouch for the guy, and retrospect, big mistake. But we're all getting closer, and it's weird because there's still sketchy things about it. Like Malik would put his face on a video, but Leo never showed his face. There was even a point in time, I think, where I was like, hey, like we're gonna jump on this call, and Leo goes, oh, are we doing video? Like I can't do video. So Leo's not even confirmed to be his name yet. But what happened was I'm talking to Steve about this whole thing. So I'm kind of the middleman with that. But I'm also talking to like the investors and Leo and Malik. And Steve and I get so far into this thing where the proposal's already been showed to Diddy's people, and he's just waiting on an update for these guys so that we can all jump on a call with Diddy, because he's flying out to LA on the 22nd. And a couple days ago, it is currently the 24th, I guess maybe 4 or 5 days ago now, but a couple days before the 22nd, I get a text from Kyle Bent saying not to fuck with these guys and that they're scammers. And me, being in the middle of this whole thing, I'm like, what do you mean they're fucking scammers? Like, we're working on this big fucking deal that's legit. I've been talking to legit investors. I'm talking to fucking Diddy's brother-in-law. What do you mean that they're scammers? He goes, they did my bank account dirty. What happened was Kyle's never met Malik. He's only talked to Leo. So I got even deeper than Kyle did, even though Kyle introduced me to these guys to get verified on Instagram. And what happened was Leo asked Kyle to do him a favor and take Malik's money and then buy Leo Bitcoin with it. Because for whatever reason, Leo couldn't buy his own Bitcoin and Malik couldn't buy his own Bitcoin. Kyle didn't question it because, you know, they had a relationship. And Malik PayPal's Kyle about $2,000. And like 4 or 5 days ago, Kyle checks his bank account and his PayPal is negative $2,000. So he goes to the transaction to see what happened, and it happened at that point in time, which was X number of weeks ago, where Malik sent Kyle $2,000. Kyle sent it back via Bitcoin, and Malik must have called the bank and reversed the transaction, and and then what happens is the bank calls PayPal and says this is an unauthorized transaction. So PayPal takes it from Kyle's account, and then Kyle can't dispute it with PayPal because PayPal doesn't allow you to use their services to move Bitcoin. So it's all fucked up, and Kyle tells me this, and I'm supposed to be telling Steve what the update is, and he's texting me, and I don't feel comfortable moving forward with this until I know what's up with this. So, and to add to it, way early on in our relationship, before we started working together on this Diddy thing, before anything, I also did a Bitcoin transaction for them when Leo said the exact same thing. He said, look, man, I need someone to get me some Bitcoin. Can you do it? Did the exact same fucking thing. Malik sent me $2,000 on Cash App, and he sent me, he did it in a few different transactions. So some were Cash App, some were PayPal, and he sends me the biggest one on Cash App. So I sent them the coin, and I checked my PayPal and my Cash App and everything, and I'm not in the reds at all. But Kyle's like, this happened to me. This happened to another friend of mine that he introduced to Leo. So it seems like it all happened to everybody except for me. So I'm starting to think, well, is the only reason it didn't happen to me because they still need me to get to Steve. So I can't just continue forward and tell Steve that maybe we're in the middle of a scam yet because we're not 100% sure, and maybe it's a big misunderstanding because there are valid credentials. So we just want to get to the bottom of it pretty much. So I send a very non-threatening text. I say, hey guys, Steve's just waiting on an update. I think I can make the call happen. But I heard that this thing happened with Kyle Bent, and I'm a little concerned because I also bought you guys coin. And I'm curious what happened. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. But if you could explain to me why you needed all of us to buy you Bitcoin, that would be great. And the next day, I wake up. Just take a sip of coffee real quick. The next day, I wake up, and there's a new Snapchat group. It's titled Allegations, and it's me, Kyle, Malik, and Leo. Leo made the group, and he's fucking flipping out. He's saying like I'm getting my fucking lawyers involved. Like, you guys are fucking fraud. You're creating quote unquote fake lucrative deals and fucking doing all this shit and saying that we're back charging you and you're trying to extort $2,000 from Leo by saying that there's this false back charge or whatever. So all of a sudden they're trying to say that we are the ones who are fucking scammers after they scammed Kyle, and Kyle is clearly down $2,000, and Kyle stays so calm throughout this whole thing and posts screenshots of his PayPal showing like, look, I'm in the fucking reds, negative $2,000. This is the transaction happened. It was a transaction with Malik. Kyle hasn't even ever met Malik. I've talked to this dude multiple times, and there's definitely weird things about him too, but I didn't think he was a scammer. Like, different, like, as we were working together for so long, you know, you get closer to people. Like, Malik would tell me that he doesn't have any friends really. All he talks to are like me and Leo. There was another kind of sketchy thing when we did the podcast episode. When I released it, he sends me this weird text, and he's like, hey man, like, just so you know, when you're really successful like I am, there's going to be people who don't want to see you succeed. So just a heads up, there might be some people who text you trying to get to me through you, and everything they say is a lie. Like, don't believe them. Just do me a favor, don't text them back. And I'm like, all right, that's a little weird, but I guess it kind of makes sense. You're probably just like this paranoid kid or whatever. And and I didn't really think anything of it, but now I'm like, all right, this motherfucker scammed some people, and nobody even DM'd me or anything or hit me up trying to get to Malik or anything. But so, you know, even if this whole thing is a big misunderstanding, because again, there were valid credentials, it doesn't change the fact that Kyle is still to this day down $2,000, and they did absolutely nothing to try to help him. And they start fucking accusing him of, and like me too, of like all this shit. And they're like, we don't want anything to do with like Kyle Bent, anybody connected to Kyle Bent. Like, we don't want fucking anything to do with them anymore. So they unadd me on Snapchat. They're like, Diddy deal's fucking done. All this shit. And and Kyle calls PayPal, hits him back. I guess they're in a different group chat now. And I guess now they're trying to pin it all on me. And they're trying to say that I'm the one who has Kyle's fucking $2,000, which obviously isn't the fucking case. Literally makes zero sense. But it's a really crazy fucking situation. And we don't really know what happened. Like, I have theories. Like, the girl I've been seeing told me that she thinks that there was a bigger scam in mind, which is why we did this whole Diddy thing. Because, you know, it's a really elaborate thing to have fucking gone through just to make like $4,000 or $5,000 or whatever. Because we literally worked for fucking months on this deal. And she thinks that there was a bigger end goal in mind, but someone got greedy somewhere down the line, like Malik or someone, and called the bank too early and then raised suspicions. Because now, if you go to the fucking Billionaire Group's Instagram page and website, all that shit is gone. It's all taken off. They told me to delete the podcast episode. I was like, bet, because I don't want to be linked to this guy at all. Like, this is fucked up. So if they fucking left without a trace, there's no fucking sign of Leo. And me just being like kind of like investigative, I've been kind of looking into it, and it's really fucking crazy because Malik has an IMDb page from like their guys on the inside, and if you look at the trivia section of Malik's Facebook page, it says Malik is a Leo, which is fucking wild. But they're not the same person, because I've literally been on phone calls with both of them at the same time, and they have different voices and they're different people and they have different personalities. And and the vibe I truly got was that Malik is like Leo's little bitch boy or whatever, does whatever he fucking says. I truly believe that Leo made Malik a bunch of money and told him about this opportunity to scam people, but it's really fucked up and it's really elaborate because Leo never puts his name or his face on anything, and Malik's the one who's doing all these transactions. And when Kyle and I were looking at the PayPal transactions with Malik, we noticed that they were done by two separate PayPal accounts linked to Malik's name. The first one with Kyle, the address that it's linked to is a P.O. box, but the one he did with me is linked to his actual parents' home address in Georgia that I verified, because you can type in addresses on Google and it'll give you these sites that say like, yeah, you could buy the information, but who lives here currently is like M star 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 Brockett, like E star 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 Brockett. So it's verified that it's his real fucking last name, his real fucking like parents' house or whatever. So the highest possibility, in my opinion, is that Leo is using Malik to conduct all these scams, but Malik is actually making money off of them, which is why he continues to do it. And he's probably just a piece of shit with no friends, and we can only imagine why. But it is pretty crazy because we got close, and he tells me about his like real life problems and shit, and it really humanizes the scammer in my mind. But it doesn't change the fact that at the end of the day, he ruined my fucking relationship with Diddy's brother-in-law potentially, because I came in with a fake proposal and a fake deal that may not have actually been fake, but due to the final circumstances, it wasn't real. I introduced somebody to Leo as well. His name is Jonathan. He goes by Sick World Music. He's a big artist. He has like 500,000 likes on Facebook, and I introduced him to get blue checked on Instagram, and he got scammed too, $800. And it's really fucked up because he actually thought it was me. He thought I was Leo. He thought I was the one who's the fucking mastermind behind this. And I paid him back out of pocket because I feel so bad. And I hope that relationship isn't tarnished. I hope none of my relationships got tarnished throughout this whole thing. But, I can only do what I can do. And I totally understand why he would think that, but that's very much not the case. I was connected to these guys through Kyle Bent. Kyle had no idea that these guys were going to do this. He had no reason to believe that. I had no reason to believe it. There were red flags in the whole thing, which is kind of what I want to talk about towards the end of this episode, which we're getting kind of close to, but just ways you can prevent it for yourself. But just a couple more details about the story. Let me just take a sip of coffee. End of the day, the whole thing is fucking insane, and nobody really knows what actually happened except for Leo and Malik, really, though I'm kind of drawing my own conclusions. And another fucking crazy thing is, I'm going to sound like a fucking stalker, but I was so curious about, I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it, you know what I mean? And make sure that I'm still not at risk of becoming in the reds, because I've had to cancel my fucking debit cards and shit to make sure that Cash App doesn't try to fucking pull my money out of my account or whatever. But I was on Malik's fucking Facebook account, and I'm looking at his pictures, and the only people who like his pictures are his sister and like either his like mom or like aunt or something, some older woman with his last name. And I go to his sister's profile, and it's fucking weird. She has she put like some picture of Malik taking a selfie in like a mall or some shit, and was like, hey, I love you, like can't wait to see you, I miss you, whatever. And then Malik fucking commented on it. This was one day ago from like last night. He writes this long post. He's like, hey sis, like I love you too, like it's really just me and you against the world, whatever. I'm making money right now, so I'm gonna have to hit you back like later. So that confirmed it to me that he knows that he's fucking scamming people, because if he's saying I'm making money right now, he knows exactly what the fuck he's doing. But the whole thing about it being his real sister, who probably doesn't even know that he's a fucking internet scammer, and they have this real relationship, and the whole like quote unquote like us against the world thing, like weirdly kind of humanizes him in a way, but obviously doesn't make what he did right. And at the end of the day, I think he misstepped. I think he made mistakes, and I think that has to do with the fact that that this guy Leo is really the fucking mastermind of the whole thing, and just manipulated this kid into doing his fucking dirty work for him. And maybe the kid knows, maybe he doesn't, maybe I'm totally wrong and these are two like childhood friends or whatever, just pieces of shit who are just in their fucking mom's basement scamming people. We'll never really know, and we'll never really know what the whole plan with the Diddy thing was either, to be totally honest, unfortunately. But we could draw our own conclusions from the story that kind of has no ending. It ended with people getting scammed, and it ended with just more questions that will hopefully get answered at some point. But I guess more of the story, if you ever meet a guy whose name may or may not be Leo Fernandez or Leo Stamp, is what his Snapchat is, I think, like Leo Stamp or Leo Stamp G or something like that, and Malik Brockett, fucking run the fuck away, because these guys are scammers and they're pieces of shit. And more morals of the story, don't open up your network without really thinking. I know a lot of the times I talk about how important networking is, and it's true. You want to form really good, positive relationships with people, and you want to bring more positive people with more positive people. But I was a little bit quick, I think, to open up my relationships and my network to these people, because truth be told, I couldn't have been 100% sure at that time that they were legit, even though the credentials seemed to be there and everything seemed to be good. But you got to be very cautious, because when you open up a relationship and you bring somebody into your network, now you're attached to that person. So if that person does the person you introduced them to does them wrong or anything, that's your responsibility as well now. So you have to be really careful of that. Never fucking do any transaction with anybody that involves taking their money and giving it back to them, because you just put yourself in a situation where the money could be reversed, and then they end up with double. Even if it seems like it couldn't happen, like it seems harmless, like, yeah, you need Bitcoin, that makes sense, I'll take your money, I'll send it back to you in Bitcoin, like it's your money at the end of the day. You never know. These fucking scammers are smart, and they're fucking ruthless, and they're fucking psychopathic. They don't give a fuck about you, your money, anything. They're in it for one purpose, and I'm convinced, just from having stalked Malik a little bit after this whole thing, that he really thinks that he's in the right, and this is what people who are fucked up do and have personality disorders and shit. They convince themselves that even though they did wrong to somebody, they're really doing right overall, which is not true. Never involve yourself in a situation like that. I was talking to another mentor and friend of mine. His name's Adam, who has also been on the show. He was the first person to ever interview Eminem, started undergroundhiphop.com, sold the business. Very smart guy. And he was telling me anybody who only takes Bitcoin from a transaction is automatically a fucking shady person, shady transaction. And that's the thing about scammers, is they always have an excuse for everything, because they always have a plan. So their excuse was that this guy works for Facebook, and because of that, he can't just take traceable transactions because he doesn't want to compromise his job, which makes sense. And add on to that fact, the fact that they actually were fucking verifying people. But it does not change the fact that at the end of the day, Kyle got scammed. Kyle's friend got scammed. I got scammed out of time, relationships. I could still possibly lose money. Who fucking knows? I don't think so, but it's a possibility. And yeah, I guess that's kind of moral of the story. So I hope it's really becoming. I feel really passionate about this whole thing. So it's become a really serious thing I'm trying to do to kind of educate people about this kind of thing. I'm jumping on Dame's Music Entrepreneur Club to talk about it. Damian Ritter, I'm going to be talking about it with Cato pretty soon. And you just got to really look out for yourself, and if things seem sketchy, then don't do it. Because at the end of the day, if these guys are trying to move money to themselves, they can do it without you realistically. And anybody who is a credible, legitimate person will understand why you wouldn't want to put yourself in a situation like that. So that's kind of it. That's that's the story, and that's what I want you to kind of take away from it. So if you have a hypothesis of what you think happened, or who you think these guys are, or like what you think the deal was with this whole thing, I'd love to hear your theories. So send it to me. Send me an email, wes@homestudiohits.com, HOMESTUDIOHITS.com. I'm not sure how much editing I'm gonna do to this episode. To be totally honest, it might be like my lowest quality episode. I haven't really heard what this mic sounds like yet, just because I'm kind of like gearing up for Christmas and shit. But yeah, I probably won't have a fan submission song at the end of this episode, but I'll have one for the interview that I'm posting next week. So I'll see you guys then. Peace.